Hi, this is Joe Satriani, and you're watching LoudGuitars.com.
It's Pamela Ashton here with Loud Guitars, and I am honored to be sitting next to Joe Satriani. Unstoppable momentum. Absolutely unstoppable career. You founded and toured the world with G3. You have toured with your solo project, Chickenfoot, writing, recording, touring. You've been a very, very, very busy man since launching Not of This Earth back in '86. When I went to your website, I see 30 different discs under your discography. So you've been very, very busy. There's no doubt why you are one of the most influential guitar players on the planet, and I am so truly honored to be able to sit with you today, Joe. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. After that wonderful introduction, who would not be honored to be sitting right here? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to talk about what the recording process was back in '86 with Not of This Earth. And if you don't mind contrasting it to what Unstoppable Momentum was like to record.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a great question. Huge difference. Back in '86, we recorded on 2-inch tape. And those reels of tape were very expensive, considering my tiny budget of about $5,000. I think each reel of tape was about $130. So we only had money for 2 reels of tape. So there were actually 2 other songs recorded for that record that had to get erased to make room for 2 other ideas that I had that I thought was better. That's how restrictive it was. And of course, editing was very destructive because you had to do it with a razor blade. And then mix down, when we were mixing the record, it was done completely analog, so there was no automation. So any move you made, you'd have to repeat it physically. So that meant the 2 of us, myself and my engineer co-producer, John Kunaberti, would have our arms spread across each other on the desk, trying to remember all of the complex moves. And if you messed up one thing, you'd have to do it again. So very often you would mix in segments. You'd go 4 bars or 8 bars or 16. You'd mix that area. You'd take that little piece of mixed tape, you'd cut it, and you'd hang it on the coat rack or something because the reels were expensive as well. And then you'd mix the next section, and then eventually you'd tape them all together. It's crazy when I think about it. But it makes you make decisions, artistic decisions, right then and there, and stick with them and never go back. Contrasting to Unstoppable Momentum, I've got a studio in my house that's far more complex than the Pro Studio we had in '86. And of course, using Pro Tools, there's non-destructive editing. You can edit over and over again for the rest of your career, and the sound is exactly the same. That gives you sort of like carte blanche to try out any idea, but you still, if you want to get your record out, you'd still have to have a schedule. So discipline's very important. But I think we are able to walk into the studio with more possibilities, more songs. We're more flexible to try out different ideas. The craziest idea can be entertained because, once again, the recording and the editing is non-destructive. You won't ruin your one piece of tape like it was back in '86. And I think ultimately the fans benefit from this.
Absolutely. Now, how does a song evolve for you? How does it start?
Well, sometimes a song comes all at once. I get sort of a inspiration and a vision, and maybe even some technical innovation comes to mind as I go to play it for the first time. Sometimes I get just the smallest little crystal of the idea, and it might be more of a feeling about the subject I'm writing about, maybe an experience with a person or something like that. And it might take a few days, a few weeks, a few years, a couple of decades, you know. Sometimes I work on ideas for a very long time. Sometimes it's improvised in a way. There's a song on the record called I'll Put a Stone on Your Cairn, which was written very quickly. I sat down with my keyboard and I had an organ sound, and I wrote this piece, and I sat back and I went, it's a good thing I recorded that, right? Because it was sort of written just spontaneously. And then I thought, well, I should play a melody over that because I'm feeling it's a kind of a memorial kind of a song, a remembrance. And so I had just gotten this new guitar with a Satriani pickup in it. I didn't know quite how to get it set, so I just had it set in a neutral position. And I played this melody, and I played it just once, and I sat back and I listened to it, and I said, well, that's perfect. I know what this song is bringing out of me, or what's coming out of me and how I represented it and what it should be about. Now, for the next 12 months, I didn't change the organ or the guitar performance, but what I did do is I tried every kind of orchestral arrangement around it to see if I could come up with something that would bring out the sense that you're honoring a memory. And that, to me, took a very long time to get right. So there you have a song that starts from an improvisation, gets done very quickly, but then the detail work takes a year, you know.
One of the things that has always fascinated me is how you go about naming your songs. So, of course, I did some homework, and I tried to see if I could find out exactly what it is. And then I learned about this cloak that you referred to in terms of the lyriclessness of some of the music, and how on this particular record you had working titles so that you wouldn't necessarily taint the musicians with what your vision of the song was, and allow them to come through. At what point in your career were you able to let go? Because when I feel something so strongly, I want somebody to understand everything that I'm feeling, and I would imagine you might be paternal about a song and want them to share the same vision, so you enthusiastically share. How did that come about in your career, that letting go and letting the other people see and feel and I guess interpret what your original seed was?
Well, I got to say that in a career as long as mine, you know, I started performing when I was 14. You get a lot of hints along the way about how people receive your music, what works, what doesn't, you know. You play a fast song at the wrong time at a high school dance, or a slow song at a wrong time. Those are the obvious things, but there are subtle hints that I think that you get from your audience. And along the way, after I'd put out a few records, I remember being on tour in Germany in support of the Extremist album. And we got word that the biggest soccer program in Germany called RAN, R-A-N, and they used to play the song "Cryin'" from the Extremist album as their highlight music to show all the highlights of the week. And it became such a popular song that the record company, Sony over there, wanted to put together a compilation CD of all my ballads, and that would be the lead-off track. And it was a record that was co-sponsored by this program. And then they wanted me to come on the program and play it. Now, of course, what they didn't understand was that the song was written as a way for me to try to deal with my father's passing away, and how to deal with grieving and remembering the good times, and, you know, holding on to hope and great memories. And here I was in a foreign country on a sports program playing this song, and these people have embraced this music that means something entirely different to them. And I knew that this was, again, one of those moments where the audience instructs you that you need to let go. After you do it, it's their music. You know what I mean? Emotionally, it becomes the audience's music. It's their property in a way, their emotional property.
And have you ever written a piece and then learned a story along those lines where it actually shifted your perspective and you started to see the piece in a new light?
I think, boy, I could talk about 100 songs like that. Yeah, because a song may start with, let's say, an idea of fun. Let's say, and then as you get excited physically and you start playing things that sound fun, the microscope digs in closer and closer to what's in your heart, and out comes all these experiences that you had that are fun, and then you think, well, what of these experiences are shared? Like snowboarding, having a great day on the mountain, hanging out with friends, driving around with the top down, And when I was writing Summer Song, I got closer and closer to the feeling of being a teenager, getting out of school. I was growing up in New York, so much like here, the weather is very dramatic when it shifts from winter to spring to summer. And in the U.S., you get almost 3 months off in the summertime, and I have a birthday right in the middle of the summer. So the summertime is this period where I'm going to get older, which is something you always want to do when you're a teenager, and possibly getting my driver's license and having fun with friends and getting more freedom to roam around and experience life. And when you think about everything that happens, I was able to concentrate that into a song. And it turned into Summer Song, and a song with no negative feelings whatsoever, So yeah, sometimes it's a dark place, and other times it's a very happy, exciting place you're writing about.
And it's brilliant that you can. It's like putting a piece of art on the wall, and if a painting's worth 1,000, then one of your songs got to be worth 1,000,000 because it's got so much to it. One of the other things that I see in your career is a certain fearlessness where you will not allow your music to be pigeonholed or squished into something that it doesn't fit. You seem to embrace the new, and you're constantly changing things up. One of the things that I heard going back to the Not of This Earth record is how you actually funded it. Your career as a solo musician really kicked off with a massive risk.
Yes.
Right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a crazy idea. I wanted to go from making an avant-garde EP, which was my first real experience making a record. It was an eponymous release, and it was on my own record company named after my wife, Rubina Records. And so when I went around looking for funding, I realized nobody was going to fund an electric guitar player who wanted to do a rock instrumental record. So coincidentally, at the same week that I was getting turned down by everybody for funding, I received in the mail a credit card with my name on it and some checks already written out saying, you've been selected because of your good credit. Of course, I didn't have any, but and they wanted me. This is back in the 80s, so I think the interest rate was 19 or 20%. It was terrible. But I thought, well, what if I could prepay everybody, the engineer in the studio? Would they give me a deal? And in fact, they would. That's all they wanted was money. So I basically wrote about $4,000 worth of checks and in one day, and got the record started. It took me about a year and a half to get it released by Relativity Records, and I was saved only by taking a gig with another local band, a band called the Greg Kihn Band. They were a great rock and roll band, very different from what was on Not of This Earth, but I'd known the guys for quite a while in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I actually really did have a good time with them. But working with them actually allowed me to pay off the credit card in the nick of time. I mean, I was like 4 days away from having the account go completely delinquent, and so I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else. But it was a chance I took, and it reminded me that sometimes you really do have to take some crazy risks to get a dream off the ground.
And G3, that was thinking way outside the box. Nobody did that either. I mean, people had this preconceived notion of competition instead of a celebration of what our differences and how we can sound, and look at all the people that want to come and celebrate and have a great night. So again, this fearlessness. And now this record, you changed things up, new musicians.
Yeah.
And what brought you to Marco and Brian?
Well, the live show is a very interesting event in a musician's life, especially someone like mine. In the very beginning, I started this process of recording either on my own or with a recording group. And then when I went out live, I would take out a different group of people. As I developed a catalog, it became more important to me to handpick the live band, because they were not only representing the new album, but the catalog as well. And so when I was putting together the idea of doing Unstoppable Momentum, I thought this is a good idea to not only, look ahead and say I'm going to be using a different live band, but that gave me the freedom to pick a studio band that was also different. So in the studio, what's the same as the live band is Mike Keneally, of course. He's playing keyboards in both outfits, and but in the studio position of drummer and bass, we have a very big shift. Vinny Colaiuta and Chris Chaney are playing on the album, and then as it turned out, Marco and Brian wound up being available, and they wound up being really great choices, because I think they can relate to the entire catalog as well as interpreting the stuff that Vinny and Chris have done for the new record. And the tour's just been an explosion of good times, I'll tell you that much. You'll see that tonight.
I can't wait. I'm so looking forward to it. I'd like to thank you so very much for taking the time to sit with us. I look forward to doing it again. I got more questions. Okay. I thank you so much, Joe. Thank you. This is Pam with Loud Guitars, signing out.